Hey guys, this is Nick Holliday, and today we are joined with Mike Haeg from CarWars. Mike, really appreciate you spending some time with us today. Obviously, from a Toyota standpoint, which is what I'm focused in on, we're seeing more and more phone calls in the last couple of years, especially in the last 12 months, as we've seen an influx of mobile traffic come into our dealership's website with more people using their mobile phone to shop. Can you kind of introduce yourself, tell us maybe why that is, and give us a little bit of background on Car Wars?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for the time. I really do appreciate it. I love doing these. So quick introduction of myself. I'm Mike with CarWars. I head up our automotive team here, and we are big believers in the value and the importance of the phone. Um, so much so, we would argue that at the dealership, which is a crazy world with a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, we would still argue that one of the quickest and easiest ways for a dealership to get a boost is to improve those phone processes. At the end of the day, that phone and the leads that the phone brings you are core fundamental ways or core fundamental opportunities to improve your sales, your revenue, service, and retention. So we are big believers in what we call own the phone. But like I said, dealerships are really crazy places, right? There's a lot going on. So these are some of the things that dealers tell us. Hey, we know the phone is important, but this is what I'm feeling. So they say this. They say, I know the phone's important. I know I need to listen to more phone calls, but I just don't have the time. Every dealer doesn't have the time, and we get it. Your checklist is long, and by the end of the day, you got 3 things done. The dealers know I need to convert more phone calls to appointments. At the end of the day, that's kind of all that matters. That's the most important piece. They want more insight on phone performance and CRM. That's where dealers live, so they want to see phone data in there. And they want to establish a culture of phone accountability. That's a big piece that's been missing the past few years. As phone calls have come more and more back into the mix, the culture of the phone has unfortunately at many dealerships become just something to the effect of, I know that we aren't very good and there's nothing I can do about it, and I just kind of let people get away with mediocrity. So we want to bring back in this idea of a culture of kind of phone excellence with accountability. So there's a couple things that are going on that are really driving this. The first, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, is really customers are just different than they used to be. So we all know technology, we all know cell phones, but when it comes to the phone, shoppers just want an easier experience. They want a faster, more seamless buying experience. Now, a lot of that has to do with what happens in the store, right? How you write the prospect up, how you go through finance, how you greet the customer, all that good stuff. But ultimately, it also comes down to what's happening on the phone on the front end and giving them a quality, seamless experience that really kind of drives the why buy from your store. And that starts on the phone. Now, as you mentioned earlier, this is very, very important. This is kind of what's driving this huge resurgence of phone activity and phone interest that we're seeing at dealerships across the country. Because of mobile, phone calls are going up. That's something that I like to say because it's nothing to do with you, Mr. Dealer. It's nothing to do with me, technology vendor. It's simply the customer is calling dealerships more and more and more. So what I like to say is you're going to get more phone calls whether you like it or not. And if you have phone processes that are leaking, if you have a phone gap, then those are just going to get worse and worse. It's kind of like having a leak in your roof. And if it's drizzling outside, not a big deal. But if it starts pouring rain, it's going to come in fast and hard. So those leaks you have are just going to get worse as phone calls go up. So traditionally, phone call tracking has really just kind of been this. I put a phone number on my website. I know my phone calls are tracked and recorded. And those phone calls typically collect dust, right? It's just hard. It's hard to manage phone leads. We kind of like to say that a dealer comes in on a Monday morning. They get their coffee. They're excited to listen to phone calls. They think they have all the time in the world, and they sit down and they see this. And they listen to a phone call, and it was a service call. And then they listen to a phone call, and it was a guy trying to sell the dealership a copy machine. And that some of that energy just kind of drains away because there's just so much going on, and dealerships are so busy. So knowing that the phone is very important, dealerships know that, but there's just a pit in their stomach if they've never been able to manage the phone. That's where we come in. So what we do is we track and record every phone call at the dealership, both inbound and outbound. And what we do with all those phone calls, which is very often thousands and thousands, is simplify the data. And we give you simple metrics by listening to the call and identifying what happened on the call. So was the call connected to somebody who could help? Was it actually a sales call? Was an appointment requested? And what was the outcome of that appointment request? Soft, firm, or decline? So some really simple data points that every dealer knows is important. But when you have so many phone calls, it's impossible to find this data yourself. So we do it for you by listening to the calls. What that gives us is a really, really simple way to approach your phones. And this is more training than anything. It's the idea of instilling a culture of being crisp on the phone. So if every dealership treated every phone up and every phone culture with being crisp, we would see massive improvements on the phone. So the first is making sure that phone calls connect to somebody who can help. There's a big difference between the receptionist answering the phone and actually connecting it to a salesperson who can help a shopper. We then want to ask an appointment on every call. Every sales lead or every sales call should have an appointment request. That's the goal of the phone call, is to set that appointment. We want to set it with a firm date and time. So we have to ask for it, and then we want to set it with a firm date and time. And then on the outbound side, we want to create a healthy outbound culture. We want to create expectations and standards for how many outbound calls we place, but really more importantly, who are we calling, why are we calling, and are we getting our prospects back on the phone? So I'll kind of quickly breeze through a little bit of what this looks like. This is a dealership's phone performance. A dealership's phone performance in a nutshell. It kind of all comes down to this: how many calls, how many were connected, how many sales opportunities, how many appointment requests, and then how many times did we set an appointment.
So you've segmented out all the sales calls, and these are just the sales calls of the thousands of calls that they've gotten in a month.
Exactly. So that's one of the biggest challenges is I know I get a lot of calls, but I just can't find the sales calls. Well, we'll take all those calls. We'll first help make sure that you're actually connecting them, and then we just pick out the ones that we know are true sales opportunities and tell you how you're doing.
That's great.
So this equation here, when you start thinking about the metrics and really kind of the levers you can pull at the dealer level and how much money is just sitting right here, dealers' eyes typically light up because they've never really thought of it in this kind of more simple equation. So think of it like this. I asked for an appointment 75 times. That's a lot of sales calls where I didn't even offer an appointment request. Out of 130, that's more than 50 times I didn't offer an appointment request. And look at all those soft appointments on the right. Those are high quality leads that we're politely letting by with maybe saying, hey, let me talk to my wife. I'll try and stop by this weekend. Versus a firm appointment, which is, we know that's 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening. Mm-hmm. So the money just sitting right here, when you start to pull these levers, is what we see gets dealers really excited. This is what a typical call looks like, so it's not anything new to dealers. It's a sales call from Auto Trader. Jack is friendly. He handled this call. He did a pretty good job. We like Jack. He's a good guy. He wants to do well. But many times Jack just hasn't been trained or emphasized enough the importance of asking for an appointment on every call. And in this case, on a really good quality lead, an Auto Trader lead, he didn't ask for that appointment. So this is where we start getting into more manageable, day-to-day, making sure that managers see this type of data and then work with Jack, and also, more importantly, call this prospect back as fast as possible to set an appointment.
Yeah, so this takes some of the responsibility from the manager of listening to the call away, and it makes it a little bit quicker for them to activate and coach off of the calls instead of also doing some of this legwork. This is great.
Yeah, exactly. This kind of puts the lead in the manager's hands. And if I asked any manager, at any dealership, hey, would you like an Auto Trader lead that called in? They'd of course say yes. And then if I asked, hey, if maybe you didn't set an appointment, would it be helpful to maybe call that person back and engage almost like a TO? And the answer is always yes. Doing that without a product to find those calls for you is very difficult.
Yep.
So we'll end on the outbound side, which is just as important in our point of view. So a healthy outbound culture means making sure that our agents are placing outbound calls, making sure that we've got a culture where they are held to some sort of standard, and then just tracking and managing those calls and recording those calls. So on the outbound side, we identify how many times or how many calls we make, how many times do we actually reach our prospect. There's a big difference between reaching a voicemail when you're making a call and reaching the person you're trying to talk to. So we identify how many times we reach that prospect and have a live conversation, and then how many times we're talking about a vehicle, and again, that appointment data. How many times can we set an appointment on the outbound call?
Gotcha. And this is your referral, your repeat customers, your equity mining, all of that, your internet leads that didn't call you, all fall within that. Yep. Awesome.
Any form of outbound call is something that we encourage. Pounding the phones is good. Where we get excited and where we typically train is making sure that we also recognize the low-hanging fruit. That low-hanging fruit is the opportunity I showed you earlier, the no appointment request. That's a good lead that would very likely pick up if we called them back. The equity mining, those are great leads. The no-show appointments, managers should be calling them back. Manager confirmation phone calls, a lot of times managers don't like to hear that. They don't want to have to hear that they should be calling to confirm appointments, but we know that increases show rates. So lots of different kind of low-hanging fruit opportunities that really drive quality outbound activity.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then holding our staff accountable on that outbound side. So the name of the game for us is taking that complex phone world and making it simple, and that's just being crisp on the phone. Connect, request and invite, set, and pursue.
Awesome. And so if we've got any dealers that are interested in learning a little bit more and going through a deeper dive into the demo of CarWars, you're the contact?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. We have a great team here of consultants and some field sales folks who work in the territories and the states that you're involved with, Nick. So there's a good chance that I would set this up for somebody who's intimately involved with that market and very often probably knows of the stores down there or of stores in that region, and it can be a great help.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.